2 hours before he left, he told you everything was fine. Not in a dramatic way. Not like someone hiding something obvious. Just calmly. You asked him how he was doing, and he gave a small smile and said,
"I'm fine."
And for a moment, there was no reason to question it, because nothing about that day looked like the end of something. The strange part about emotional distance is that it rarely begins with a loud moment. It begins quietly. So quietly that you often miss it the first time. Weeks before that day, small things had started shifting. Nothing dramatic, nothing you could point to and say, "This is where things changed." But there were small pauses in conversations that used to flow easily. Moments when he seemed distracted even when he was sitting right beside you. Messages that came a little later than they used to. Replies that were slightly shorter. Still kind. Still warm. Just not as present. At the time, you didn't question it. Because when something feels good between two people, the mind naturally looks for simple explanations. He was probably tired. Maybe work had been stressful. Everyone has days where they are quieter than usual, and besides, whenever you saw him in person, the connection still felt real. He still looked at you in that attentive way, still listened carefully when you spoke, still asked thoughtful questions that made you feel understood. So the idea that something deeper was changing inside him didn't feel possible yet. There was one moment that stayed in your memory later. You were sitting together, talking about something simple, a trip you thought might be nice someday. Nothing serious, just one of those conversations people have when things feel easy. And suddenly he went quiet. Not uncomfortable, just thoughtful. You noticed the pause and asked what he was thinking about. He hesitated before answering. Then he said something small that didn't seem important at the time.
"Nothing, just thinking."
You smiled and continued talking, because moments like that happen in every conversation. But later, when everything had changed, that pause began to feel different. Like the moment when something inside him had already started moving in another direction. The day he left didn't feel heavy. It felt normal. You woke up, talked about ordinary things, shared a few quiet moments. Nothing dramatic happened. If someone had asked you that morning how the relationship was going, you would have said the same thing you had said many times before. It felt calm, safe, real. Which is why the sentence he said later that day felt so unexpected.
"We should talk."
Those words carry a strange weight, even when they are spoken gently, even when the person saying them doesn't sound angry. You felt that weight immediately.
You asked him what was wrong.
And once again he gave the same answer.
"I'm fine."
But this time, the words didn't feel the same. Because people rarely say, "We should talk," when everything is fine. There was a long pause after that. The kind of silence where both people can feel something shifting, but neither knows exactly how to explain it. Finally, he spoke again.
"I didn't expect things to get this serious."
At first, the sentence didn't make sense, because nothing about the connection between you had felt forced. It had grown naturally, slowly. Two people getting to know each other, learning each other's rhythms, feeling comfortable enough to share small parts of themselves. But sometimes that is exactly the moment when fear begins to appear for someone who isn't used to staying. Because closeness is easy when it still feels temporary, when it still feels like something that could disappear without changing your life. But when it becomes real, when it begins to feel meaningful, the possibility of losing it becomes real too. And that realization can be overwhelming. You asked him quietly if he wanted to end things. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked down at his hands as if he were trying to find words that would hurt less. Finally, he said something that stayed with you long after he walked away.
"I didn't mean for it to happen like this."
It sounded honest, but it also left you with more questions than answers. Because people rarely plan the moment they leave. Distance often grows slowly inside someone until they suddenly realize they don't know how to stay where they are anymore. And when that realization arrives, it often feels sudden to the person on the other side. What made it harder to understand was this. He wasn't angry. He didn't blame you. He didn't say anything cruel. In fact, he said something that many people hear in moments like this.
"You didn't do anything wrong."
And yet, those words can sometimes make things more confusing instead of less. Because if nothing was wrong, why did it end? That question can stay with someone for a long time. It makes you replay conversations, moments, small details, trying to locate the exact point where everything changed. But sometimes there isn't a clear moment. Sometimes the change happens entirely inside one person, quietly, gradually, until one day they realize they are standing somewhere they are not ready to remain. The truth about connections like this is complicated, because when someone leaves in this quiet way, it doesn't mean the feelings were fake. In many cases, the feelings were exactly what made the situation difficult. Real connection can feel overwhelming for someone who isn't used to trusting it. When closeness begins to matter deeply, it also creates vulnerability. The possibility of being hurt, the responsibility of staying. And for some people, those feelings appear faster than they are prepared to handle. So instead of moving closer, they step back. Not always because they want to leave, but because they don't yet know how to stay. The difficult part for the person left behind is that the story feels unfinished. There was no explosion, no betrayal, no dramatic ending. Just a quiet shift followed by a door closing, and silence where there used to be connection. But over time, something else becomes clearer. When someone walks away at the moment things become real, it often says less about the connection itself, and more about what they were ready to face inside themselves. Because closeness does not scare people who are comfortable with staying. It only scares people who suddenly realize how deeply they might care. And when that realization arrives too quickly, the easiest escape is often the one that leaves the most confusion behind. Walking away while everything still looks calm on the surface. Even if only hours earlier they were still saying the same words that made you feel safe.